André Rieu, that reassuring smile is what made classical music accessible to millions of people. For decades, he embodied flawless elegance, the man who transformed Strauss's waltzes into popular celebrations. But behind that smooth facade lies a far less harmonious reality. Over his 60-year career, some collaborations turned into scars. Artists crossed boundaries, shattered the sacred trust of a conductor who considered his orchestra a family sanctuary. Today, at 74, the king of the waltz finally lifts the veil on these silent ruptures. Among the names he has erased from his world, that of Russell Watson resonates like a painful paradox. At first glance, they had everything in common. Rieu, the Dutch showman who electrified classical scores, and Watson, that British tenor dubbed the people's voice. Two revolutionaries who democratized opera, each in his own way. One with his flamboyant shows in packed stadiums, the other with his touching story, a former metalworker turned international star. Their meeting in 2008 seemed destined for legendary duets. Yet their collaboration was cut short in a deafening silence. The drama unfolded during a European tour meant to celebrate their artistic partnership. For Rieu, the stage is a temple where every detail is choreographed with military precision. His orchestra? A micro-society regulated like sheet music, founded on absolute loyalty. The musicians describe him as a benevolent but unyielding patriarch. Avoiding the media spotlight was a non-negotiable commandment. However, according to several witnesses, Watson's team began feeding the press with minor gossip. Initially harmless, anecdotes about rehearsals, tidbits about travel. These whispers soon turned more toxic. Within weeks, newspapers buzzed with rumored tensions between the two camps. Artistic disagreements, conflicting schedules, forced smiles during stage entrances. For Rieu, it was a personal betrayal. The man who compares his orchestra to a family united against outside storms tolerates no grain of sand in this perfect mechanism. In a rare confidence to a biographer, he would admit much later, "Some wounds never heal. When trust is broken, nothing remains but silence. No public dispute, no vengeful statement, just a gradual disappearance." Watson is absent from the next posters, erased from programs like a figure scrubbed from an old photograph. The general public notices nothing, but insiders understand the icy message. The tenor is now persona non grata in the Rieu empire. The tragedy takes on a cruel dimension with fate's timing. Just as Watson faces a medical ordeal, successive operations for pituitary tumors, a long convalescence, Rieu's career reaches dazzling heights. In December 2019, his album Happy Days tops the classical charts, even surpassing the joint release by Aled Jones and Russell Watson. The contrast is striking. Rieu celebrates his 70th birthday under a shower of confetti before 18,000 fans in Maastricht, while his former protégé struggles to regain his voice after treatments. This rupture crystallizes a clash between two irreconcilable worlds. Watson, the self-taught singer who performed Nessun Dorma in pubs before conquering the Royal Albert Hall, embodies raw authenticity. For him, sharing his daily life with fans is natural, almost vital. Rieu, meanwhile, cultivates mystery like a conductor guarding his score. His philosophy: magic comes from total control. A media leak is not a mere misstep in his eyes, but a crime of artistic lèse-majesté. Their paths will never cross again. Watson continues to record. His 13th album was released in 2022 with Aled Jones, while Rieu remains the smiling sphinx of Viennese waltzes. Their shared history was merely a brief counterpoint in the great symphony of show business, but it reveals an unyielding truth. In the world of performance, trust is more fragile than a violin string. Here is the rephrased and expanded version of the script. The story of André Rieu and his artistic collaborations resembles a waltz with sometimes unpredictable rhythms. Take Carlos Marin, for example, that colossus with a velvety voice who made global stages vibrate with Il Divo. When this Spanish baritone with a conquering smile entered Rieu's meticulous universe, it was like mixing vintage cognac with fizzy soda. The effervescence created unexpected sparks. Marin was the rock star of pop opera. With Il Divo, the quartet created by Simon Cowell in 2003, he had redefined musical boundaries. Imagine, over 30 million albums sold, tours in packed stadiums. Yet when he entered the highly disciplined circle of the Johann Strauss Orchestra, his prima donna habits created cracks in Rieu's perfectly oiled machine. The Dutch maestro had built his empire on a sacred principle: the orchestra as a united family. Every musician was an essential link, but no one was to overshadow the whole. A fragile balance, like those astronomical clocks where every synchronized gear creates magic. Marin, however, arrived with his own Swiss clock, ultra-precise but operating on a different tempo. Witnesses recount how he negotiated extended solos, adjusted harmonies to highlight his powerful register, turning every performance into a theatrical one-man show. Some artists don't play with you, they play over you. Rieu would confide much later, in a scathing remark that spoke volumes about their incompatibility. The split was quiet but final. No scandal, no press release, simply a door gently closing. The irony of fate was that precisely this fiery temperament fueled Marin's success with Il Divo. His electrifying charisma was the group's soul, that explosive blend of opera and pop conquering the world. When death claimed him abruptly at 53 in December 2021, it sent shockwaves through the industry. His Il Divo companions mourned him as irreplaceable, while fans remembered an artist who lived music with near-destructive intensity. For Rieu, however, the conclusion remained absolute. In his musical kingdom, no ego should rise above the collective horizon. Marin magnificently embodied this antithesis, a star too bright for the orchestral constellation. Yet if Carlos Marin represented an artistic challenge, the episode with Katherine Jenkins revealed an entirely different friction. In 2009, when Rieu invited the Golden Voice of Wales to his legendary Maastricht concert, everyone envisioned a perfect musical marriage. The queen of classical crossover and the king of waltz. On paper, it promised a fusion of two prestigious worlds. Jenkins arrived, however, with an entourage worthy of a metropolitan opera diva. Personal stylist, dedicated lighting director, vocal coach backstage, an entire logistics operation that made Rieu's team bristle, accustomed as they were to his Spartan efficiency. The meticulously choreographed rehearsals shattered before the Welsh singer's demands. Every detail became a negotiation. Spotlight positions, wardrobe choices, even the sound balance between her voice and the violins. The most surprising part? Rieu himself would readily acknowledge Jenkins' exceptional vocal talent. But this very divergence in approach made collaboration impossible. On one side, an artist shaped by the record industry, accustomed to a dedicated entourage. On the other, a perfectionist for whom every concert was a precision mechanism where all elements must interlock flawlessly. This experience left Rieu with lingering bitterness. Long after the event, he would express his bewilderment toward this new generation of artists for whom music sometimes seemed secondary to image and marketing. A philosophy diametrically opposed to his own quest for orchestral authenticity, where even the greatest voices must know how to blend into the collective score. Yet these conflicts reveal a fascinating facet of the maestro. Behind his smiling gentleman's image hides an uncompromising guardian of the musical temple. Whether with Carlos Marin or Katherine Jenkins, each failed collaboration outlines the contours of an unshakable conviction. For Rieu, true magic isn't born from oversized egos, but from the mysterious alchemy uniting individuals in service of a shared work. Some collaborations seem promising on paper but reveal unbearable dissonances when put to music. This is precisely what happened when Rieu invited the talented Jenkins to join him for a special tour. While the public saw her as classical music's rising star, Rieu would soon become disillusioned. The artist's demands, which he later described as those of an outsider, shattered the sacred unity of his orchestra. Jenkins insisted on brighter lights, multiple studio retakes, and a central stage position during ensemble pieces. To Rieu, this violated everything he stood for. These concerts were meant to rest on an unwavering principle. The orchestra's collective spirit must reign supreme. She sought the spotlight more than harmony, he later remarked with some bitterness. And those who know Rieu understand that for him, Music must always transcend ego. The orchestra first, music above all, and ego properly in its place last. The outcome was decisive. The planned tour was cancelled without official explanation, leaving audiences perplexed. Jenkins, meanwhile, continued her career sharing stages with legends like Andrea Bocelli and Placido Domingo, whom the fans, for their part, were not mistaken. Unlike Belly or Domingo, Jenkins was never invited back to the Rieu's stage. This silence spoke volumes. In a world where egos clash relentlessly, Rieu rarely preferred to voice his grievances. But those who know him well understand that this collaboration remains one of his greatest regrets. A few years later, Rieu would have a similar, though even more profound, experience with Andrea Belli. When he invited him to perform at an exceptional open-air concert, the event was billed as a historic meeting of two global icons. On one side, the violinist who had transformed classical music into a spectacle of planetary stature. On the other, the world's most beloved tenor, meant to offer a moment of pure musical unity. But what followed became a perfect example of what Rieu now seeks to avoid at all costs. A clash of egos, philosophies, and opposing visions. From the very first rehearsals, the tension was palpable. Belli's team began altering the show, adding pieces, extending introductions, and multiplying anecdotes. What was supposed to be an equal exchange gradually tipped in his favor. Each rehearsal dragged on, every adjustment subtly pushing Rieu into the background. For an artist whose world is built on balance and precision, this drift was intolerable. By the night of the concert, the show had transformed into a showcase for Belli, while Rieu was reduced to a mere accompanist. The reviews were merciless. The headlines celebrated only Belli, while Rieu's name was relegated to a footnote. The maestro who had built that stage, selected the orchestra, and drawn tens of thousands of spectators found himself invisible, eclipsed by his guest. Rieu never made a public complaint, but his remark, much later, was as revealing as it could be. The stage is big enough for everyone, but only if we remember to share it. Those who know him understand this was the most direct reproach he ever leveled at Belli. As for the proof, it is in his actions. The collaboration was never renewed. Behind this controversy lies a deep clash of artistic visions. Bocelli embodies the star system of classical music, where a single voice commands the spotlight. He is the headline, the brand, the story. Rieu, on the other hand, built his career by deconstructing that hierarchy. For him, the orchestra is the true star. Every soprano, every instrumentalist, every detail contributes to the spectacle as a whole. His genius lies in balance, not domination. Bocelli's gravitational fame, even if unintentional, shattered that balance. Fans still debate. Did Bocelli's artistry simply eclipse Rieu's sense of spectacle? Some critics believe Rieu's resentment stems less from Bocelli's ego and more from the brutal reminder that the world still values serious classical singers more highly than popular conductors. Inviting Bocelli was to risk comparison, and this time Rieu lost. But to reduce the matter to a personal rivalry would be to miss the profound wound. For Rieu, it was a betrayal of principle. He did not hate Bocelli's voice or his celebrity. What he hated was the disappearance of the collaborative spirit, the way a supposedly shared stage had transformed into a spotlight for one man. It wasn't competition. It was imbalance. And imbalance is the one thing Rieu cannot tolerate. To this day, Bocelli is absent from Rieu's endless world tours, despite the commercial gold such a reunion would guarantee. Anna Netrebko, when she joined André Rieu for a series of special concerts in 2011, the collaboration seemed like something out of a dream. Rieu, the king of the waltz, had built his empire on warmth, accessibility, and emotional connection. Netrebko, dubbed Audrey Hepburn with a voice, was already an opera superstar, celebrated for her impeccable technique and stage presence. Yet, from the very first rehearsal, something seemed off. Rieu was reportedly troubled by what he perceived as a lack of heart. While Netrebko delivered every note with immaculate precision, the maestro expected more vulnerability, more lightness, a spark that went beyond mere technical mastery. She sang like a machine, not a soul, he confided to colleagues. For an orchestra built on passion and theatrical intimacy, her style clashed with everything he demanded from his artists. Tensions worsened through the rehearsals. Netrebko's operatic discipline, honed under Valery Gergiev at the Mariinsky Theater, was tailored for the grand stages of the Metropolitan Opera or La Scala. Rieu's concerts, in contrast, relied on erasing the barriers of formalism to create an immediate closeness between the artist and the audience. To Rieu, Netrebko's distance, however elegant, felt cold. To Netrebko, Rieu's insistence on theatrical connection must have seemed like a dilution of operatic purity. The chemistry never materialized. Despite her renown, Netrebko was quietly sidelined. She was never invited to perform with Rieu again. In the world of classical crossover, this silence spoke louder than a public quarrel. Rieu's orchestra, fiercely loyal to his vision, remained intact, with no trace of her passage. The experiment had failed. What makes this rupture even more fascinating is its parallel with the controversies that have surrounded Netrebko throughout her career. Revered for her art, she was also criticized for her personal and political choices. In 2014, she was photographed brandishing the flag of Russian-controlled territories in Ukraine after making a donation to an opera house in Donetsk. As a result, she withdrew from Metropolitan Opera productions rather than publicly condemn Russia's actions. These events show how artists, even the most talented ones, are complex human beings, bearers of contradictions and convictions that can sometimes distance them from those with whom they share the stage. For Rieu, music has always been a matter of balance, mutual respect, and shared passion. And when that balance is broken, he has no other choice but to protect his orchestra, his audience, and his vision, even if it means forgoing collaborations that might shine under the spotlight but which, deep down, would be nothing more than flashes in the artistic sky. Publicly denouncing Vladimir Putin was a decision with immediate artistic consequences for Anna Netrebko. Peter Gelb, the director of the Metropolitan Opera in New York, was unequivocal. With Putin killing innocent people in Ukraine, no collaboration was possible. This stance had worldwide repercussions, and for André Rieu, whose artistic universe is built on joy, sharing, and family-friendly spectacle, the aura of controversy and political rigidity surrounding Netrebko was intolerable. The Dutch maestro's art had no use for the brilliant coldness of a soprano who was technically perfect but politically divisive. He wanted artists ready to bend, to smile, to reach out to the audience, to embody a certain idea of human warmth. His refusal to invite her, whether a voluntary decision or a mere artistic instinct, was enough to permanently sever all ties between them. The result could not have been clearer. Rieu continued to dominate the charts with albums like Happy Days that reached #1, while Netrebko faced a world increasingly divided by her art and her political positions. Their brief collaboration remains a textbook case revealing what happens when two titans with antagonistic visions of the stage collide. One pursuing a form of individual artistic perfection, the other seeking above all to create a collective emotion. And in André Rieu's universe, heartless perfection is simply unforgivable. This search for an authentic connection with the audience may explain why the maestro was so enthusiastic about discovering a young talent like Hayley Westenra. When she took to his stage at just 17 years old, everything pointed to the beginning of a long and fruitful partnership. Rieu had built his career on making classical music accessible to a wide audience, and Westenra, with her crystalline soprano voice and youthful charm, seemed the perfect fit. She was humble, gracious, overflowing with that pure potential that fascinates. Rieu happily took on the role of mentor, guiding her through her first performances and spotlighting her as one of his finest discoveries. But the young New Zealander's career was taking off at a dizzying speed. Her first album, Pure, had already made history in 2003 by topping the British classical charts and selling over 2 million copies worldwide. She had become an international sensation, singing in multiple languages and even joining the prestigious group Celtic Woman. With fame came the constraints of a global career. Complex contracts, omnipresent agents, overloaded schedules. This entire ecosystem, rigid and commercial, clashed head-on with the philosophy of Rieu's orchestra, an ensemble managed like a close-knit, disciplined, and profoundly loyal family. The breaking point, seemingly insignificant to the outside world, was nonetheless colossal in Rieu's eyes. It occurred during the preparation of a charity concert for UNICEF that he was organizing. The event was meant not only to raise funds, but also to symbolize unity and generosity through music, values absolutely fundamental to the maestro. But at the last minute, Westenra's team announced her withdrawal. No detailed explanation was given, only a carefully worded message expressing regret. To the public, this might have seemed like a simple scheduling conflict or a management decision. For André Rieu, it was far more serious. "She broke our trust," he stated later. In his ethos, loyalty was simply non-negotiable. Withdrawing from a charity concert was not just a lack of professionalism in his eyes. It was a betrayal of the core values he defended body and soul. Westenra had gone from the gracious young talent he had mentored to a celebrity guided by the cold imperatives of her fame. Their professional relationship ended without public scandal or media uproar, but the wound was deep. Westenra pursued her solo career, recording albums, singing for heads of state, and assuming her role as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, for which she was the youngest person ever appointed. Rieu, for his part, channeled his energy into projects that reinforced his philosophy of connection and loyalty. The irony of history was cruel. Among these projects was the tribute to New Zealand with Dreaming of New Zealand, a piece that Hayley Westenra herself had once performed. This piece, conceived as a homage to her homeland and directed by Rieu, transformed into a painful and silent reminder of a partnership that had collapsed under the weight of a broken promise. Betrayed trust. For Rieu, the Westenra episode remained etched in his memory as a harsh warning about the dangers of fame in the classical crossover world. Technique, media appeal, these have value, of course, but without loyalty they mean nothing. In his eyes, Westenra's decision to leave was not merely a scheduling issue. It was far more than that. It was proof that she no longer belonged to the intimate, disciplined family he had so carefully built. Today, the two artists continue to shine on their own, under the stage lights, but their paths have never crossed again. And in Rieu's jealously guarded world, once trust is broken, the waltz continues. But without you, even the king of the waltz cannot escape betrayal. For 20 years, Rieu has shown us that behind the glamour of the stages, every success hides its conflicts. 5 singers, 5 lessons in broken trust, 5 destroyed harmonies. And today, a question lingers. Which side would you choose? The side of Rieu's strict discipline, or that of the artists who dared to cross the line? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the behind-the-scenes of a world where music sometimes hides its secrets well, don't forget to like this video and share it to keep the conversation going.